Hello, hello, and welcome back. It's another episode of My Pop 5, the show in which we bring on guests to break down 5 pieces of pop culture that had an impact on them or helped shape them to become the creators and innovators that they are today. It's Wednesday, and that means we got a new guest for you today, and this one is one I've been so excited to have on the show. I've really wanted them on for a long time, and today we made that happen. But before we get into today's episode, I want to take some time to plug the work that he's doing. The LA comedy scene here is thriving and it's awesome. But one of my favorite things here is the improv scene. You hear about theaters like UCB, The Groundlings, so many others, but Casey's running one of the best improv groups there is, Holy Shit Improv. One of the things that's really special about the work that Casey's doing is, yes, you can see him at UCB, at the Dynasty Typewriter regularly here in LA, but also you can catch him online. Improv is one of those things that you typically can only find in your local theater, and Casey's bringing it to the world via his Patreon. So check out Holy Shit Improv and check out this episode and our wonderful conversation. So without further ado, here's Casey Feigh. Hello, everybody. We are back with another episode of My Pop 5. We are here with an incredibly talented comedic director, actor, writer, improviser. I've seen Casey perform at UCB in multiple different improv venues, but also you've probably seen him on some incredible shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Goldbergs or even various commercials. Casey, you're so talented, and I feel so lucky to have you on the show. Thank you for joining.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's one of those things when you really find like a performer who like really resonates with you. It's like so awesome to then see them in all these other things, and sometimes even going back and seeing you pop up in things that like even before I had seen your work. Like the first time I can actually remember seeing you perform is your improv group Holy Shit was performing at the Silver Lake Lounge pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And I lived a couple blocks down from there, and so I was walking up the street, saw you guys were doing a show, came in, and then that night you were just like hitting so many things that were just so funny. And then I started going to more Holy Shit stuff, started seeing you pop up at UCB when that opened up, and so yeah, I've just been a really big fan of yours.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, it's nice to hear. The nice thing about live comedy is you do get that immediate feedback of like an audience telling you if they enjoy it or not. But yeah, it's always fun. Like I'm kind of a believer of like just having a long career is like doing a bunch of stuff, and then it's surprising like who pops in when. I was doing those Holy Shit shows probably like it would have been like 14 years into my comedy career, And it's like, oh yeah, it's like how you can kind of like pop up and see me in some older stuff. Cause it's like, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. It's kind of thanks for checking it out and liking it. It's great.
Of course, yeah. Now, there's a lot on your Pop 5 that, one, I'm excited to get into because it's awesome, but two, because no one has kind of really done anything in the sports world, and so I'm excited to kind of talk about that and see how it kind of relates. So, for the audience, we ask everyone here, Casey, what is, without comment, without context, what is your Pop 5?
Wow, without comment. Okay, then here we go. Monty Python, Spike Lee, Sesame Street, Rhymesayers Entertainment, and SportsCenter.
Amazing. Yeah, I want to get into these. But before we kind of get into the first one, why don't you tell the audience a bit about like kind of your background? I know you grew up not in LA, you live where you live currently. And so how did you kind of get into everything and tell us a little bit about your story?
Totally. Yeah, I think, this exercise made me think like my influences, I think, were formed a little bit younger. So a lot of these are kind of like childhood things that first came to me. I'm sure there's a version of these I could do of like this year of things that I loved or recently, but I kind of chose things more in my childhood. So my childhood took place in Minnesota. I grew up in a kind of smallish town, St. Cloud, Minnesota. But my mom was from Australia. So I had like a little bit of that classic Midwestern upbringing, and then also a little bit of like an outsider perspective ever so slightly, just with my mom knowing that it's like different. I took not the traditional path of most of my friends in Minnesota. And I went to school in Minnesota, grew up in Minnesota, always liked comedy and sports. Those were kind of mostly my things. And then eventually decided to pursue one of those, and it was comedy. And I moved to Australia for 1 year. I had a decent job in Minnesota after college. And so I was working in the marketing department of Mall of America. And quit the job to move to Australia, wrote a terrible screenplay, tried stand-up for the first time. I decided I was going to pursue this, and then talked to a friend, deciding between Chicago or LA, and he kind of convinced me to come to LA. So I moved here. I knew one person, and I've been out here coming up on, March will be 18 years. I've been out here since.
Yeah, that's such a big, choice to make. I know, I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and coming to LA, especially if you don't have like a resource or a set of resources or community around you, it can be tough. Was it a difficult transition, or did you have, moments where you regretted it, or was it all excitement and you kind of, fell into it right when you came?
Yeah, I think I had like real low expectations, like the fact that it was like Tuesday in March and I was in a pool, was like I'd already won,
Yeah.
So like it didn't take much for me to be like, yeah, this is great. And then like as you achieve things, then you want more things, and then probably later on in life, there's maybe more time being out here. There might be more like moments of frustration or moments of, should I still be following this path? Which I think is always a good question to ask yourself. No, like, truly my original goals were like I moved here around like basically about the same time that Funny or Die launched. And I remember just like my goal was to try to get something on the front page of Funny or Die. Like how could I do that? That was like my only goal. And then to go to the place where it's like, I got to work for Funny or Die, and so then it's like you blow past your original idea and then keep moving forward. So, but no, I've loved it out here. Truly, just like, I mean, the simplest stuff. Even like, I remember visiting my brother once in Portland, and he didn't have to close his door for like mosquitoes and bugs, and I was like, what? There's places in the world you can just leave your door open. Like, so it's not. It didn't take much for me to be like, all right, yeah, this is the place. This feels right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel the same now and loved so much about it when I came here. But I also remember like kind of feeling overwhelmed in some ways. Albuquerque's a pretty small place, but I would just remember like clinging to like the comfort of like anything that was recognizable. So I would like spend way too much time like walking around Target because I'm like, I know what this feels like, or a Chili's or something, because I'm like, I know what this is going to be like. But no, love the city. But okay, let's go ahead and get into it. Monty Python's first thing here on your list, for the audience, comedy troupe, British comedy troupe. You likely know them most from, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but I'm interested to hear, why was it so impactful for you and why is it here on your top 5?
I think it was like, again, this is kind of a childhood thing for me because the movies that I responded to came up before I was even born. But yeah, Holy Grail, and then Life of Brian was a real big one. Life of Brian, if you don't know that well as well, it's basically just like, it's kind of making fun of the Bible. Like it's kind of as if there was another guy named Brian that everyone thought was kind of Jesus, and they kind of do this story of like him kind of be like, no, I'm not. There's a whole, it's just like the comedy pattern, like, no, don't worship me. And like, yeah, don't worship you, but I guess it was like a little bit of my mom is religious, I'd say in the cool way, not in the dangerous way. And so to have like that was a part of our home, but then also this element of like, and we can laugh about this. And then I also think like, I mean, a lot of these influences that I listed kind of also have offshoots of other things, which is like British BBC style of comedy that like I was introduced to from my mom and her family. I don't know if I would have been introduced if I just like both my parents were American, like John Cleese, who's in Monty Python, then had a comedy where he like ran a bed and breakfast that we would watch, and Faulty Towers, and just kind of like this silly, absurdist, and maybe it's a little bit of like playing pretend with your friends. I mean, these were all very easy for me to relate to. These were like white men, just like a group of white men. So like it was, in my wheelhouse of what I was used to, but just like with the tint of Britishness and silliness. And then that leads to like Kids in the Hall and other things that I kind of eventually fell into and stumbled into and continue to enjoy. But this was like me just being silly as an adult, being silly and knowing you can still take the piss out of stuff, even the most serious stuff like the Bible. Like I think that the beginning of Life of Brian is, he's given this is actually Jesus, he's given like his big service on the mount or whatever. And they just like pan back from the incredible stuff he's saying all the way to the very back, and just like putting things in a realistic perspective. Like there's thousands of people listening to this guy talk. There's just people in the back being like, what did he say?
Yeah.
He say, God bless what do you say? The meek? What the meek? What have they ever done? That really tickled me.
Yeah, that's really good. It's so interesting too, because like there's so many things that you could see, even if not directly influenced, but even in that realm of like religion, like even in modern day, like with Righteous Gemstones, like in that space, or there was that Year One with Cain and Abel type of stories. So it's just like early tropes that you see from that time and see how they can evolve into other things even down the line.
I also just think like, serious things are ripe for comedy. Like even in my life when I'm going through some of the harder things I've gone through, like I'm very close to laughter. you know, and then sometimes I can get there. Or like, again, just growing up in the church a lot, like knowing how much, like I'll often make a joke of like kids always crush in church because like it's such a sacred place that all of a sudden the kid will be like, are we finally done? You know, or just like some like true statement, and everyone just like erupts in laughter. And I always like lean over to like whoever I'm with, and I'm like, yeah, like that wouldn't crush in a comedy. Like, that guy's got a good room. You know, this is like, it's a great venue for that joke, you know. But so I think just like being willing to, I guess I don't take too much seriously. Like obviously people I do in relationships and how I treat people, but like, I guess this does go to like career-wise too. I was able to sell a pilot where we like made fun of the next coming of Christ or the next Virgin Mary, kind of was our whole premise of the TV show we got to make. And so, yeah, I guess that's still something that is really funny to me. Anyone who's too serious about anything, then it's like, why?
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I think even in Sing You Play and some of your characters, even in the improv world, like generally you're mostly some of the grounded one and can have some of the serious scene setting and can let everything play off of that, which I think is a really good attribute in the way you can work too.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's some real fun to be had with like establishing tone and who we are and where we are and what we're doing. And then at that point, yeah, what's fun with this? Let's keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, do you think at this point there was anything from even enjoying these comedic things that made you be like, I want to be the one to tell jokes? Or when did you start to realize you were funny, you know, and how does it correlate to you?
Yeah, I think from a real young age, I kind of had an older brother and older sister who were very different. And then I was kind of the one that would like bring them together a little bit. Like I was the meet in the middle one. So like, but I remember from like a really young age doing like stand up for them. And also like them both being older than me, but being like willing to listen to me, you know, like not being like mean older siblings, but like truly like value what I had to say.
Yeah.
And one thing, I mean, I just remember we were kind of a performing family, just like not my parents, but as kids, we just like really took to it. And so like, I remember one time our babysitter, I think this all happened. When I think back and I'm like, this is a weird thing that happened. But when we were kids, I think she booked us to play like her high school's homecoming assembly for us to like sing a song, candy themed or something. I don't know. We sang some sort of like song together, me, my brother, and my sister. And I remember like we had to walk out of this little like gingerbread house and like onto the microphone. And I like tripped on the wood bottom of the gingerbread house, whatever, and just like face planted and just like destroyed, you know, like like a huge reaction. And I remember just being like yes,
yeah, that was it. More.
I wasn't even trying, but these people love me right now. I'm a chubby little kid who's about to sing a song and I fell on my face. Like, this is great. So yeah, for a very young age, I think I was like, it took me a long time to actually admit that there's a path to this and I should maybe follow the path. But I kind of always, comedy was something I just kind of thought that's like me, that's a part of me.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's two things from that I think are like funny and good. First is that like, it's awesome that you like got excited by the laughter, because there's also the opposite of that where people would like shriek in embarrassment and like cry and never want to do it again. But I'm also thinking about the humor of like your babysitter, like going to whoever, the student counselor or whatever, to be like, I got these kids. They're going to come to homecoming.
That's why
I promise you they're great.
I know. I should have checked with my sister because she's like our family historian. I almost am like, why did this happen? You know, like, yes, because as I logically think it through, like, why do we need we don't even go to that school. We don't. Yeah, they must have really needed to kill 2 extra minutes on that assembly or whatever. But yeah, I guess like, and maybe this is even, I was like a taller kid growing up. So maybe there's a little bit of that, like, if people are going to look at me, I want to control the way they look at me. Because I think there is something that like my friends who were also very tall growing up, a lot of them were either very loud and outgoing or very, you know, inner and quiet and shy. And I think I kind of went the other route, which is like, oh, if you're going to laugh at me, then like, I want to be in control of that laughter. Yeah,
that's interesting. And I'm curious too, like if there was, I don't know what your comedy tone or voice was at that time, you know, but, you know, if the things that you're taking in are from, you know, this British influence of something like a Monty Python, that's not, you know, whatever's on TV for the most part, even here in St. Cloud, Minnesota, or whatever might have been popular on a sitcom or something at that time. So I wonder if there was like some uniqueness from like even just the influence that you had
I mean, I do think a lot of my stuff was older, and I don't. Maybe it's just like my parents weren't watching. Like now, if I had kids, I'm not watching the current popular comedies,
Sure.
you know. But yeah, like I was into the Three Stooges, and I think all kids were into like cartoons like Looney Tunes and stuff. But yeah, stuff like this, Holy Grail, Life of Brian. Like, yeah, I think just I don't know. I think maybe that informed me in some sense. I mean, I remember my dad would watch Cheers, but I'd usually be at bed at that time, and I've gone back to watch it and stuff. I don't know. I think also just like a blessing to have like family that is, to me, and it's because I still like it, but it's like had cool taste and stuff a little bit, you know. Like not every. I mean, I guess Stooges I haven't watched in forever. I'm guessing I probably wouldn't love the Three Stooges if I watched it right now. But at the time, yeah, I guess maybe this was a little bit of like the VHS generation where it was like there only was a few channels, and so you kind of had to go and curate your own. My family chose this kind of stuff, and that spoke to me.
Yeah, I remember like one of the things at school that like was sometimes a bonding thing was like if there's something on a show that we were watching, you know, sitcom or otherwise, like quoting that to each other, you know. And I know like even the first time I saw Holy Grail, you know, like I don't know how many times like, you know, as guys, friends would do something and it's just like the response was just a flesh wound, you know, like
merely a flesh wound. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, just the nights who say neat, just like the weirdest stuff. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yep. And so were your friends into it as well? Like, were you showing it to them, or, you know, was it kind of like only something that you had as like your thing?
I mean, I think my brother and sister, so that like my friend's version. And I think, yeah, totally. I think eventually people came over, we'd be watching these. I know my mom, because she, you know, she became a couple of, forget what it is, like when you get like confirmation something, she'd like, you know, my friends would be, because one of my friends was around our house a lot. So he hung out with my mom. He's like, would your mom be my confirmation person? I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so usually when she had someone to that they were getting confirmed or first communion or whatever, she would give them Life of Brian as like a gift. My main version of like quoting stuff for days on end at the lunch table was The Simpsons. That was definitely like, that was the thing that we did.
Yeah.
I consider putting that on my list because it was such a huge part of my life. But I was like, I feel like for my guess is The Simpsons has been covered on your show and probably will be, at least for me. But yeah, so I think there was a version of this, but it was a little bit, I don't think everyone was like jumping right into watching Monty Python with me. But,
yeah, fair.
But at sleepovers and stuff, I think it would be like, yeah, you know, or people had, Holy Grail was probably the most likely one that people had seen. And because there is, you know, there's like the visual gags of just like, the guy bleeding out and getting his arms and legs cut off. And that's, kids can relate to that comedy for sure.
Yeah, I remembered thinking like, because I was younger also when I saw it too, like kind of being a little suspicious of bunnies too, because of the rabbit in that. And then I think at the same time, there was like this book in school called like Bunnicula or something, which was like a fake vampire rabbit. And so I was pretty skeptical of rabbits there for a while because of those two pieces of pop culture.
Both of them were probably just trying to like make the joke of how like
innocent they are,
innocent and, you know, gentle bunnies are, but you only saw the other side. So that's your first introduction. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, exactly. I was also like allergic to like every animal. Like I've gotten over them, but when I was a kid, like almost anything with fur. So like that only added to it too. So just
real reason to get away. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. I haven't had like, there's only one person who has done Simpsons, and actually, I think you know her, Kylie Brakeman did Simpsons.
Yes,
for sure. So, well, let's go ahead and move on to your next one here. Spike Lee. I think this is very different tonally and otherwise in terms of his work. But yeah, I'm curious to see what it is about Spike Lee and his work and which pieces kind of gravitated towards you and that you resonated with.
So this is, again, really early on in my life. Like, you know, again, I was trying to figure out how much sports to include in this list actually, or like what pop culture, like is Michael Jordan pop culture, or, you know, like are the 90s Bulls or whatever. And when I was a kid, Spike Lee was like the coolest thing. He was in Nike commercials with Michael Jordan. They had like posters. He played a character, Mars Blackman, which was actually, I think, from film. I don't know if it was actually this character's name in Do the Right Thing or if it was the School Days one before that. But anyway, so as a kid, like my parents were pretty cool about art. So like they weren't I think maybe there were some movies that they would watch before us to make sure, but I remember like Stand By Me was an R-rated movie that we watched as kids a ton because my parents were like, they show a dead body in one scene, but like this is a good movie, you know. And so it was similar with like a lot of Spike Lee stuff where so the big ones for me would have been basically like his Nike campaign with Michael Jordan. That's probably the introduction, honestly. And then from there I went to Malcolm X and then Do the Right Thing, and then his whole career after that. He got Game, Bamboozled, 25th Hour, Inside Man, Original Kings of Comedy. He directed that. But as a child, it was Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, and those Nike ads. In fact, it had such a big impact. I would remember being like, Malcolm X was the first movie I ever remember like waiting for to come out. It was the first movie that I'd like as a kid like heard about, knew Spike Lee was making it, knew Denzel Washington was going to be in it, knew it was coming out whatever this summer or whenever, this award season or whatever. Yeah, I didn't know even that aspect of it. But so I was so pumped for that movie. And it was like the first chapter book I ever read was a Malcolm X biography, not the autobiography, but a one for kids.
Yeah.
Because I was like so into it. And I had like a Malcolm X hat that I would wear with like the African colors and Plymouth Rock didn't land on us, or that quote like on a t-shirt that I wore and stuff. So, and that was all came from like digging Spike and then kind of learning from that. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. What do you think it was that felt so cool to you? Like, generally, like it's like you can look back at your background and see how something might have been, like important, So what do you think it was that culturally or just, background wise or otherwise that you're like, this is cool or this is meaningful or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like Black culture has always been cool American culture since I've been, born, maybe forever, and there's like white versions of it for the masses, with like Elvis Presley taking rock and roll or whatever.
Sure.
But I think like I was maybe in, at least it felt like to me, an earlier enough generation where it was like they were actually starting to let some Black people actually like profit and be in control of this thing. So, I mean, it all kind of comes in loop together between like basketball and hip hop, but also like Spike Lee just was so cool. Like there was like comedy in these commercials, like, cause he's like a small dude, and like the one I remember where he just keeps asking like, and also it felt like Nike was a young upstart who was like smart enough to like give creatives the lane to do their creative thing. Like, I mean, I don't know how many notes he got on this, but those commercials popped, which then made posters, which then helped sell shoes. And so like there was one where he plays Mars Blackman. He's just like, is it the shoes, Mike? Is it the shoes? And he just like, and it's like such an obviously commercial for shoes, but it's like Jordan just like dunking and being like, no, Mars. And he's like, is it the book? No, Mars. And then it's got to be the shoes. He's like, no, Mars. I just remember it being like funny and looking cool and like going to, as I move forward in my career, to be like, oh, I also like that like Spike put himself in it in the same sense like Kevin Smith and other indie directors, even Jon Favreau, who is someone whose career I always look up to, is like, he's like, if he's making Elf, or if he's making Iron Man, or if he's whatever, he's directing it, of course, but he's not like put himself in there. For one reason, that's probably just like a financial thing of like, I know this Elf is going to get played every holiday forever. Now I'm getting paid as a director and an actor, but it's also like establishing yourself for opportunities that you don't have to be in control of. So now, while Spike Lee can direct films, he can also get roles as an actor. He can kind of like establish himself. And so like weirdly looking back on like the career I want and being like, oh yeah, like it's not too far from that, one of those first things I was really drawn to in Spike Lee. And then I guess there must be some version of like connection of my family of like, I guess for lack of a better term, maybe like righteousness or equality or fairness. Maybe fairness is a better way to think of it. I think that was a big thing in my home. And so like stories of unfairness, you don't have to go very far in like any marginalized group. The one that I connected with most was like Black men, but like just like, oh yeah, you watch Malcolm X, you watch Do the Right Thing, you watch whatever. It's like most of these stories are like, he got game, everything bamboozled clear. It's like, yeah, the country we live in is kind of set up against us and it's like actively working for us to fail. And I think like hearing those stories at a young age and kind of connecting with that was like, I weirdly loved it. And I guess, I don't know, it just like made my brain think, like question things, good and bad, who is really good, what is really bad, all that kind of stuff in a way that, I guess, I think like we didn't watch much action films in my family. We watched more like, I can't believe that happened, like just getting I don't know. So Spike Lee was to me like some of the best at, that's like, not giving his stories that he tells enough depth, but just like that version that I connected with, I really did connect with as a kid.
Yeah, it's interesting what you started with in that. It's like so much of that culture was just cool. And it like brought to my mind the scene in Do the Right Thing when he's like talking with John Turturro and he's like, who's your favorite basketball player? And it's Michael Jordan. And who's your favorite actor? Eddie Murphy, and it's just like going through that. It's just like, it was so widespread in the culture at that time of, taking over, like this is the cool thing,
Yeah.
And so
you don't got any black people on your wall. That's the whole thing. Yeah. You got to get some black pictures on your wall. Yeah.
Very cool. Very good. Did you have like I'm not familiar with the demographics of St. Cloud. So was it primarily like culture
White.
through pop culture, or if it's just like not many, yeah.
Yeah. There was some diversity, but it was more Laos, Vietnam, Asian countries. Now there's a huge Somali population that wasn't there when I was growing up, but no, it was pretty white. So I think maybe that was another element of like not really being in on a secret, because it wasn't like these were pretty popular, huge things in our culture, But yeah, I think it was very much being like, I'm choosing not country music. I'm choosing hip hop. Was like very clearly a choice that I made, and do not regret it.
Good. Yeah, no, it's awesome. I think it's such a cool visual to just think of, like, especially knowing the demographics were predominantly white, like you walking in with a Malcolm X hat and all that stuff is got to be like, this kid's woke, Yeah, very cool.
I had this memory as I was making this list of, because I wore the Spike Lee hat all around. And I remember before a soccer game, I had to take it off, and one of my friend's moms was like, "Oh, here, I'll hold it for you." And like, I gave it to her. And then after the game, I was like, "Hey, where's my hat?" She's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Truly. And I was like, "I gave you my hat." What? She's like, "I don't know." What hat? And like, truly must have thrown it away or whatever the fuck she thought was.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, so pissed off. And like, yeah. And I was like, again, so there was that too, I'm sure there were people being like, this little dumb kid, how dare he think he knows what's going on. But yeah, that was like as the most in anyone's face that I ever was. Like, I'm trying to like, I wasn't an organizer. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just like, this is what looks cool. This is what pop culture is cool. This is like, this is what they're wearing on Martin. This is what Living Single is.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to dress like Theo on the Cosby Show, whatever. But yeah. So there was small elements of that throughout my life, certainly. But you kind of learn to avoid those people pretty quickly.
Yeah. Rough. That sucks. Especially when it's like, that would be something to like still be able to go back to your parents' house or whatever and like pull out of the basement, like that hat. So just knowing that happened is a bummer.
Yeah, that lady sucks.
Yeah, like as you're talking about some of this stuff too, I think what's really cool about some of the Spike Lee stuff is like just the tone of the films, inspiration or otherwise. Like some of the sitcoms you're talking about, I'm thinking of like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or even like with the Wesley Snipes connection of like White Men Can't Jump. Like so much of those movies tonally, I think, were impacted by a lot of the stuff that he did in Do the Right Thing or He Got Game or whatever, and so yeah, so influential.
Absolutely. Yeah, like again, it was like, it's weirdly crazy now for how popular hip hop music is, but like he was one of the first people that's like, you can make money off this. Like to the white American business people who then were like, oh, okay, now we'll accept this thing once we can make money off it. And Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that's like one of my dreams would be to make like my version of that type of show. Not even that story, but just like a comedy that is so fun and anyone can watch. And every once in a while does like a serious episode that has real emotional moments, but is just, cool and just cool, really. I think that show is so cool.
That show is so good because like you mentioned, it's so funny. And like, man, I still will like tear up when I even think of like why don't he want me, man?
Yeah.
Gosh, cool. Well, you've referenced music and hip hop in a few ways, so let's go ahead and transition to Rhymesayers. Man, I was so grateful that you put this because there was just like so many artists on here that like I remember even from like the MySpace era, like finding like Greaves and Prof and like those artists that I was just like, blast from the past. It was fun to like go back and listen. So tell me about Rhymesayers. I know there's a local connection, but tell me what you love about them.
Yeah, so I was trying to decide if I should pick individual artists, and I just thought the collective was kind of the way to go because, this is a independent hip-hop entertainment collective out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I guess, I don't know for sure, but one of the more successful indie music artists or indie labels probably of all time, maybe, I don't know. But certainly when I came up in high school, I probably found it, maybe the end of my high school, Atmosphere was the coolest one. He's one of the founders of Rhymesayers. But it was like if you wanted to go down to Minneapolis and go to a concert and hang out with some of the cool girls, and then they were going to Atmosphere, and so all right, then I got to get turned on to Atmosphere so I can make a good mix tape for these cool girls or whatever. And then you'd go, and then you'd also, once you went to an Atmosphere show, then you would see his opener, and for me that was like Brother Ali and Sage Francis, and Sage Francis wasn't even on Rhymesayers, but or Murs, or Dilated Peoples came with them later. MF Doom was with them at some point. So like you just like fall in love with these people, and like Brother Ali and Atmosphere were the biggest for me. Brother Ali, like a Muslim albino who I have very little in common with, in our day-to-day lives, but just like loved the messaging. And then I think the reason why I put it on here was, weirdly, there was a time in my life where I was in Minneapolis and kind of I had a job, as I said, in the marketing department, but I wanted to like pursue a creative passion because I've always considered myself creative. And I was truly deciding between doing comedy or being a rapper. Those were the things I remember sitting on, like, there's a distinct memory of me sitting on my porch. We had a couch on our outside porch, just like sitting there and being like, should I become a rapper or should I be a comedian? And weirdly, in Minneapolis, I knew way more successful rappers. Success is like a general term, but like the people who, my apartment before that across the street was like POS and Doomstree, and they were like on the front of City Pages, which is like, the cool newspaper about arts and entertainment. And I'm like, oh, they live right across, they're in my same neighborhood. They make money doing this, or like seeing these people tour, seeing like, and then now to look at what I'm doing and being like, wow, I'm like, holy shit, improv is kind of my version of Rhymesayers a little bit, which is like, I am a small business that I'm running, that I'm kind of touring the world to try to get more people to know about, so I can sell more subscriptions, so I can, like them doing albums, whatever, and trying to figure out like, should I be doing merch? Is there, should I, what is overextending? What is doing what you love and having it have a side of it that is mostly creative, but a little bit of business, and not being afraid to take that on. I know so many people who are talented, and even in Minneapolis, so many amazing people, but these were guys mostly who were like, yeah, we're talented and we're going to tell you about it. We're going to make a business. We're going to come to your city and crush and be better than anyone. And you're going to fall in love with us and you're going to learn about us. And so I'm just impressed with that, like, because I think Midwestern is a little bit to me of like, don't stand out. I really felt like I grew up in a vibe of like, you can be anything you want, but like, don't be a jerk about it. Like, you know, you can be a president of a bank. Don't say you're going to be the president, And so I just like the ability for them to go like, yeah, we're doing this with our friends, and we think our friends are some of the best people in the world, in the way I think some of my friends are the funniest people in the world. And then also just like, so many of my favorite songs come from artists out of Rhymesayers that I had to shout them out.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things with hip hop in general is just like the evolution has happened so fast, and it's because of these pockets of, like the types of flows and things you're hearing in, Minneapolis is going to be very different than what you hear in Atlanta or the New York scene. And all of that was happening in real time so fast, and then getting inspiration from one another. But like, being able to zoom into these pockets of this area is just like, it's such good stuff, because I think it's some of the first times, at least, that I remember it feeling like, I don't know, this is going to sound like a diss, but like so much more intellectual in some ways, like with the types of things that were happening. And like, I would want to listen back and back again just to feel like, oh, this is like poetry, in like some of the biggest ways. And so, yeah, so many great artists from this collective for sure.
Yeah, I think that, and it's like finding your version of it, right? Like being like, okay, we love hip hop. We're not, Bronx, the South Bronx. We're not, California knows how to party. Like, we're not that. Like, what are we? We're like inside a lot, and it's cold, and we're stuck with our thoughts. And like, how does that sound? And making those choices. And then also, this was like, again, this is like early 2000s, so there wasn't like streaming on the internet, really. Yeah. It was kind of what was played on the radio, what was played on TV, and then CDs that people played for you. And these guys were not played on the radio and not played on TV. So it was only your cool friend had a CD, and you're like, whoa, what is this? And so like, or for me, it was like going to a live show and then being like, whoa, wow, that person's good. That's the opener. Wow, who's next? Wow, they're good. Wow, this is the main guy. Not, And so like, I guess I just don't have that anymore. Like now, if I'm about to go to a live show, I will listen on my title to be like, all right, let's see who the opening act is. Let's listen to him. Okay, let me see and so I'm just like, okay, I'm prepared. I kind of know what I'm getting into, but this was kind of just being surprised and presented in a really cool way. And I haven't been living in Minnesota for almost 18 years. So this is like, listening to that music still kind of brings me back to that time, which was a great time in my life, my early 20s, just kind of lonely, but figuring out the world kind of.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's really cool. And one thing that I like want to be clear about with them too, and I loved your connection to it, is like when you're putting together any of your holy shit improvs, like you're bringing in people who have different skill sets and different strengths, and they shine in so many different ways. And I think with this too, like as much as we talk about like I mentioned the intellectual comment or whatever, like Prof, who's part of that, is like silly and goofy versus like some of the other stuff, you know. But it's all like you can get these different cast and characters that are doing things in different ways, and even though there is like a vibe to what was happening in that ecosystem. So yeah, I just love the variety from, you know, MF Doom is very different from Brother Ali, is very different from Atmosphere and Greaves and Mac Lethal or whomever. So
and it all kind of comes from that same vibe, like I want to put you on, which I have, you know, so much of that. So many people in LA I'd love to showcase and give opportunities to. So yeah, I dig that.
Awesome. In a similar vein, a bunch of different cast and characters that kind of fill different vibes and, you know, have their own version of a collective. Let's go to our good friends at Sesame Street. This is probably working backwards, I imagine, a little bit, but I want to hear about.
No, I just heard about it. Getting into them now.
In my job at Mall of America, I saw my first episode of Sesame Street.
Yeah, no, this was probably the first thing. Like I remember learning how to tell time, or not understanding time yet. Like as a kid, you don't really care what time on a clock is or whatever. But I do just remember sometimes being like, how many more Sesame Streets? And, you know, like, like one Sesame Street. Okay, cool. I get the concept of that. Or two Sesame Streets. Okay. So it was like a big part of it. Yeah. And like I thought, like I listed this and then I was like, I probably shouldn't list it because I can't really talk. Like I don't even remember many characters. Like now I'd be like, I think Elmo was, but I was like, I don't even know if Elmo was on the show when I was like into it. But it was more just like, again, it's like a little bit of silliness with education with, I mean, a couple of mine here are like PBS I'm learning. Sesame Street, Monty Python was kind of on PBS too, stuff. So there might be something about like the household I grew up in, just a PBS household.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just like, I mean, they kind of tie into the Muppets, kind of tie into everything. But I just love, you know, I love songs growing up. I dug the learning aspect of it, the funness of it, the silliness of it. And then like, yeah, there'd just be like a lot of variety, like almost a ton of, you know, to simplify it and be like a bunch of shit that TikTok is now, or like short films could be, where it's like, you just follow a kid on his day getting bread for his mom. And then it would cut to someone talking about their favorite book. And then it'd be two monster looking puppets singing a song to get, you know, like, and then we'd talk about a number we dug or something.
Yeah.
But I think just like the funness and I think silliness, playfulness of that show really connects to me.
Yeah. Now, in looking back at it, especially as an adult, I think one of the things is like, that's so, I think, interesting and compelling. And like, I think there's probably like case studies that could be done on it, though, is just like the lasting effect it's had, you know, like it's still running today, you know, and then, but also, I mean, like, you still see some of the biggest selling toys are, you know, Elmo toys, or, you know, people are still buying stuff that still has the Cookie Monster on it, you know, and it's like, there's so many things that are like so compelling about it. But I also think that like, there's something that like you find in shows like this a lot, but like, I'm thinking of like, you know, Nickelodeon had stuff like Hey Arnold or whatever, that you have all these like different characters, but like, almost like an appreciation of like people are going to have all these different backgrounds, and it's still like you're friends with them anyway. Like they were friends with Oscar the Grouch, even though he was a Grouch, you know, or, you know, things like Bert and Ernie had their own things going on, but they're still, you know, part of the group, and Big Bird, and, you know, all these different people that are coming through. It's like, regardless of kind of who you are, your circumstances, it's like you can have a community and appreciation for what they bring to, you know, your world. So I think as a kid I did look at my maybe because of this show too, but like as my neighborhood, like a neighborhood, you know, in the way that I very much don't now as an adult. Like like even if I didn't ever talk to them, I knew the names of like the people on my block and like had opinions about them. And I think there's something to this, like you said, it's like still on to this day. Like, I had a friend who recently was on Sesame Street and like as himself, and that was like the coolest credit I could think of. I was like, this is so cool. Like you are on Sesame Street. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, again, just from doing a little bit of studying in college, like I remember the original reason for Sesame Street was to try to like, you know, it's designed in a city like that because it was in theory trying to bridge the gap of like people who were didn't have parents at home and were like basically the Head Start program. They were like missing out on education that these
parents that were more into their children's lives kind of learned. And they kind of, the study I think was like, it actually didn't really do that. It more like the people whose parents like mine were home and with me were like encouraging me to watch Sesame Street and stuff. Sure. So it kind of just like, but I think, ultimately the end result, who knows? But I do know that for me, it was so influential. And also like kind of, I think me as an adult realizing that a lot of my joys are still from my childhood joys and maybe they don't need to change so much. I think I was always under the opinion of like, there's childhood things that are great. And then you grow up and you find something else that, like you become a doctor, a dentist or whatever. And I think I had enough encouragement and the feeling that my family provided me with that like, I didn't have enough terrible drama in my life that I had to take a job that I hated just because it paid money, right? Like I have this underlying feeling that like I'll be taken care of, which may not be true, but it's like what I feel. And so when I have that feeling, I'm able to follow my dreams and passions a little bit more. Then maybe some of that comes from Sesame Street too, just like that element of like, go be silly. And like, you can have, I was going to say friends who are 60 and 6, but I didn't want to, but it's like, like you can go to Mr. Hooper's and hang out with Big Bird. Like, you can, like have a diverse life. That sounds fun.
Yeah. And so much of that show is like creating the inspiration for creativity and for finding your voice and for dreaming, So I think like, even at the very least, it's like that permission to dream is like, can be enough, whether it's constant or otherwise, to be like, I'm going to go do the thing. And if that's, counting or, eating cookies, like that's kind of what they're really pushing. So, yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is make believe to this day. Like doing improv is like just playing make believe with my friends. So like, I'm sure that has a huge impact on them just like looking to me in the TV and being like, let's play pretend, I was like, okay, I love this.
Building those worlds and that whole improv adage of if this is true, what else is true, and building on that and on top of that. And it's very cool.
Love it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this next one was the one I was probably most excited to talk about, not for any other reason than no one has ever kind of brought anything sports related in, at least not at this level. And it's like a side of like myself that I'm just like, in my world, I'm surrounded by creatives all the time. And like so many of my musician friends and people in this creative, like film world are just like, no, we're not really into sports. And I'm just like, come on, like I need to get that outlet somewhere. So SportsCenter, I'm curious to hear, your love of SportsCenter and to geek out about it. So
again, I was deciding between Pardon the Interruption, PTI, and SportsCenter, both very influential in my life. PTI for a while was my favorite TV show, and I watched it every single day, Monday through Friday, for truly years and years and years. I bet probably 10 plus years. I watched it every day. And that's like watching it live, like not like taping it, just like, but I think SportsCenter was certainly before that. And I think also a little closer to maybe what I aspire to do and or do, because one, I had like ideas in the same way I thought, like, should I become a rapper? I did have a list somewhere that I made at college of like 5 things I want to do before I die or something. And one of them was like, some version of like throw to a highlight on SportsCenter, or like I knew it was probably too specific of a dream to be a SportsCenter anchor, but I think like that was certainly a career path that I would have been very excited by. But like when I came up again, it was kind of new. It was like they were doing their own thing. They had these like kind of funny but a little cheesy like commercials that they shot. Again, in the same way Spike Lee's Nike commercials felt like there wasn't a lot of like network notes on this. Didn't seem like there was a lot of like, it felt to me as if it was like they gave some people in their knees, maybe early 30s, some money and were like, it's the worst that can happen. They don't work, like everything felt low budget, but in a way that I really like. Even now, they still modern these commercials that they do now for SportsCenter off these like original ones they made when they were kind of just starting. And I just remember just like, again, they were funny. It was like, I didn't even watch hockey, but there was Cam Neely, who I learned only through these commercials. He had just retired and he's like out in his front doing like yard work, gardening or something. And he's like, oh, nice. You start a whole sports channel the year after I retire. Yeah, why don't you kick my dog while you're at it? And I'll always remember that, just like kick my dog while you're at it. It's such a fun, I'd never heard that before. And I was just like, oh, this is like a great way to advertise. Yeah, I think like I used to watch it every night, 10 o'clock, it would come on. And it was like, I think, Dan Patrick, Keith Olbermann, Craig Kilborn, some of the people, Stuart Scott, Linda Cones, I don't know everybody, but yeah, I was just like, I remember being like, oh, this is like, these are cool people And also back then I couldn't get sports any other way. So they're giving me truly the highlights of the day. And now I don't really watch it much. I sometimes have it on the background just because like sports noise is like on my TV,
therapeutic.
Yeah, just like while I'm working and stuff. But I tried to watch it and I was like, oh, they have changed completely. Like it's all about like betting lines, and it is because they're getting, every sports clip that they used to like introduce to the world has now already been shown on Instagram, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. But this was the only place that you could watch games. This is the only place you can get highlights. This is like how you followed sports, was this thing. And it was cool and fun. And yeah, it was like almost like what The Simpsons was for me in 4th, 5th grade, sitting by the lunchroom table, quoting the last episode. In high school and college became SportsCenter, talking to all my friends about it.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's almost everything you said is just like my experience as well. Like I remember coming home from school, like I was probably an hour or so ahead of you being in New Mexico, but like I would have that block of Around the Horn, PTI into SportsCenter or the first evening SportsCenter. And like, I just locked in. That's it. I'm eating my after school snack or whatever. And like watching that for the rest of the night. But especially, where I grew up, I know Minnesota actually has professional sports teams in the area. So there might've been like local games on your TV. We got none of it. And I grew up as a Minnesota Vikings fan. So the only thing I knew about anything that would happen with the Vikings was like, if on a top 10 or something, they're like, yesterday, we threw a touchdown. And I'm like, heck yeah, or I'd see the scores at the bottom and be like, yeah, we won. And I'd like write it in my notebook to keep track of our record and stuff like that, So like, that was like the thing. And it's like, I just put some on, like, unfortunately, again, after the Vikings lost this week in the playoffs, it rolled into SportsCenter immediately after. And so I was like, oh, watch this. I haven't watched in a while. And it's like all sports debate now. And there's not really none of the like highlight stuff. I was like waiting, like, are they going to do a top 10 like of the plays for the night? Or like, I remember they used to do the spoofs of the not top 10 and like,
top 10,
and I'm like, I watched for probably like 45, 50 minutes and like nothing like that happened. So I was like, it's not what it once was, but yeah.
Yeah, I think they still do the top 10 plays. But yeah, sometimes they might do like of the week instead of the day or whatever. But yeah, definitely, again, I think like a huge failing in our whole media landscape is like when news had to start making money, it really, I think, fucked up our society. There was other things too, like allowing money to come into politics and stuff. But I think once it was like, oh, now news has to make money. Okay, now news has to be entertainment. Now news has to be people arguing with hot takes. And I go like travel a little bit for comedy, and I'll like watch the news in Iceland or watch the news in London or watch the news even in Canada and be like, oh, this is like so different. This is like they're actually feeding me information and not trying to scare me and not trying to rile me up or get me angry. And I think, in the same sense, that's with real news, I think that's happened to sports news too, which is like, I said I don't watch SportsCenter and stuff, but I listed a bunch of examples from this week. I was watching when they did this whole thing on like Ja Morant dunked on Wemby, but it didn't actually happen. It was like after the whistle, and SportsCenter did this like whole thing about it, even though it's not even a part of the game, even though it didn't even happen, even though it wasn't points. But it was like I could just see their producers being like, "This could bust out into a social clip. We got to have our take on this social clip." And is
Wemby a bust now? Because exactly that happened or whatever.
Yeah, I'll be the one person to say there's this sweet spot for me of like, and again, I guess in the same way Sesame Street and in the same way Monty Python for sure and Rhymesayers feel like SportsCenter did feel like a group of friends, like those people that were presenting the news, whether it was an act or not. It felt very real. It felt very much like these are friends who would be hanging around talking about this, shooting the shit about the sports anyway. And they just so happen to be getting paid, probably not very much, certainly at that time, to do this and to live in Bristol, Connecticut, or wherever they're based out of. And so that probably gave it more of a familial feel too, because they were probably kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's like, we got nothing else but to be friends with each other. And I think that same vibe is what I keep kind of trying to create with things, which is like working with friends, using our passions and the things we're already interested in to try to make some money from media conglomerates and fucking, terrible companies who please give us some money so we can make some art for you.
It's so heartbreaking because I know like Around the Horn is like ending, I think after this year or something like that. And it's like, that's where like in the good side of news, like similar to the SportsCenter but PTI as well, but like real sports journalism, like they'd bring in all these guys. So then I'm like, I knew who, Bill Plaschke was, who wrote for this area, and like
Bob Ryan from the Boston. Yeah,
exactly. And so like I would look to those takes. Like I remember when Kevin Garnett first went to the Celtics, like reading Bob Ryan's stuff at that time was just like, you learn who, like you said, your friends are, your people that you could trust. Like I still listen to like Dan Le Batard regularly because
Love Dan Le Batard,
he was covering all this stuff like when LeBron was first going to Miami. And so like then I fell in love with his show just because like that was how I could get what was going on in Miami. But then I just started loving his show because it was his show. So just like, yeah, it's crazy what that world did to be able to like cultivate these personalities and these relationships, but behind originally really good quality journalism.
Yeah, because these people all came from the journalist side of it, whereas now people are probably, the newspaper, the writing, actually having to, now people are probably coming out following this, like, I'm a content creator, I need to do this thing, and maybe not even taking journalism classes or whatever. And I think, there is some benefits to the current media landscape. I'll speak about sports in general, which is that like these people did start getting almost too much power in the sense that they were, again, usually older white men who didn't play the sports, writing about usually younger black men who they might not relate to. So they could be way off base by being like, this guy's got tattoos, he's a danger to society, so I think there is some value in like hearing from the player's perspective too, and being like, hey, no, yeah, we get paid millions, but also it's a job. And sometimes when I'm moving from one city to one city, I got to put my kids into school. My wife doesn't want to be in Salt Lake City. This first week, I'm not playing that good in basketball. I apologize. It's because my life, like there's value to hearing directly from the sources. But I thought like the SportsCenter, like highlight package reel, because it was kind of a nice mix of like every once in a while they do a longer story that had some journalistic stuff, but it was a little bit more like, no, here's just highlights. Like the scores. Yeah, the scores you need. And we're going to make it a little bit interesting with some jokes, highlights, etc. Which, I'm just such a fan. Glad that you put it on here. It's such a cool thing. And I'm glad that it exists, because I don't know that, if it didn't exist, that I could have had a fandom with sports the way I do, like without SportsCenter, like, I mean, I would have, liked the Vikings, but never have seen a game, kind of thing until it was way too late. And I might be like some of my other musician friends that just like don't care about sports because, we grew up in Albuquerque and the only thing there is a AAA baseball affiliate, Yeah, it is interesting. In most cities in America, and this is like back when I first moved here and whatever, that would have been 2007 or something. It was like, if you get in a cab, you'd be like, what's the score? And they would like know a sports score. And in LA, it felt more like, what's the box office? Like, meanwhile, there are real, true diehard, specifically Dodgers and Lakers fans. I think there are other ones for other sports as well, but those feel like the biggest ones to me of like, they are a part of the city. And it's just so I always get uncomfortable when people are like, LA's not really a sports town. I was like, no, I think you're like a transplant from some liberal East Coast school who moved to Los Feliz or Los Feliz, and like your friends don't watch sports. There are huge, like actual Los Angeles citizens who live and breathe these sports. The Kings, the whatever else it could be. Even these soccer teams now are really popping up. And WNBA is getting more popular. Yeah, I'm a big fan. And I guess to relate it a little bit to what I still do, which is like growing up playing team sports, I think is a little bit close to what I do in most of my work, which is like working with people, even if it's like being hired onto a job and I'm coming on for one day, like I do kind of without thinking about it, it's like, what's my role in this team? How can I support? How can I have a good time, do my job, and then also leave with people liking me or wanting to play with me again or work with me again. And I think all that like sports taught me a lot of those lessons growing up as a kid that had I not, I think I would have been more, and maybe I already am a little ego driven on my own. Like maybe I am, but like, I just remember like as a kid, like learning at like a co-ed basketball, like co-ed birthday party. And I'm trying way too hard to win the basketball game and realizing the girls I'm playing with aren't having fun anymore. And being like, oh yeah, okay, I gotta learn to chill out a little bit, not be as competitive or not win. Maybe winning isn't only the most important thing. Maybe there's other things about sports and fun that I can take from it. So yeah, I think that kind of relates in that sense to sports, and then the connection I chose with SportsCenter. Yeah, and you mentioned the community you're still building, but I understand too, like you still play with some of your improv friends. Like I've heard Dan Lippert or Ronnie Adrian like talk about you have a killer shot, can still shoot. And so, that's even a way that you're even bonding with people, even in your comedy world. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I got too into comedy for a while where it was my only thing. And so I was like, I got to find something else. And I was at that point coaching a women's basketball team, and they had given me a gift card for like $100 at the end of the season. And I was like, oh, let me buy some shoes. And then from that started playing again. And now I've been playing for 10 or coming up on 11 years, every once a week at least. And yeah, now I'm posting my footage more online because I'm getting to the age where I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to get to play. So I just want to I want to prove that at one point.
I could tell you, I could show you. I could shoot. I could show you.
Yeah. I mean, I was down in Palm Springs last week trying to get away from the smoke and fire. And my childhood best friend lives down there and his parents were visiting. And so I showed my former best friend, his dad, just some of my highlights of me shooting threes. I was like, I love this. I was like, this is way cooler than me showing you any TV show or commercial I've ever been in. Let me just show you ripping off 10 straight threes and showing you my highlight package.
Very cool. Well, we'll get you out of here, Casey. Before we do, though, we ask everyone 5 rapid fire questions. First one here, if you had to be on a reality TV show, which one would you choose?
Well, interesting. I guess people love The Amazing Race. So maybe I'll do that one. I get career-based. I guess I should probably go on to something for do they still do the Last Comic Standing or anything? Maybe I should do that one to try to get some better reps. But no, I'll go Amazing Race because Survivor feels a little scary. I feel like people almost die on that one with their bodies and stuff. So I'll do the traveling with one person around the world. That feels fun. I feel like I don't get too mad. I'm sure I'd stress out at a couple points, but yeah, Amazing Race. I'll stick with that.
Amazing Race. Love it. If people have never consumed any of your Pop 5, what's the one you'd want them to go experience right now?
Oh boy, that's tough. People listening to this, I guess I'll pick a Spike Lee. Maybe if you haven't seen Do the Right Thing, that feels like a good one. If you've never seen that, maybe. If not, you can see something. If you've seen that, maybe 25th Hour, or I like Bamboozled. I haven't gone back to watch it, so I'm not sure, but I assume it's up. But I'll say pick a Spike Lee movie you've never seen. See what you think of that.
Beautiful. You may have already answered this one, but if you were able to be a pro sports athlete, what's the sport you would choose?
This is actually different because basketball is by far my favorite one. But if I could play one game, it would be to play for the World Cup United States soccer team. I just think
cool.
That would be. I played soccer growing up too, and basketball was more my love, but just the stepping out, playing for your country, and then just the pitch, stepping out on the field with that amount of people. And then I guess the fact that we were probably going to lose because we're playing for the U.S. isn't as fun, but for some reason it feels bigger and more fun walking out of that tunnel than basketball stadiums are kind of always basketball courts. I don't know. Just I'll pick the playing for the World Cup U.S. Soccer team.
What's one piece of advice you'd give someone thinking of trying comedy?
Follow the fun. So if it's something you're trying and it's no longer fun, then maybe try something else. If it continues to be fun, then keep pushing forward.
Love it. And then what's something you'd say you love most about having grown up in Minnesota?
I had a pretty idyllic childhood. I grew up in a city that had a couple colleges, so there were educated people around me. It was small but not too small, so we would just bike and be home by the time I truly lived across the street from a church, and my parents would be home when the church bells ring, because then that's dinner, and that meant 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, whatever it was. So I did have just the playful, but I don't know, I guess I don't know if this is more my experience than everyone, but I did meet so many creative people, so many amazing artists, so many kind, progressive thinkers that I loved it. Yeah, I really enjoyed my childhood. I'm just wondering if there's anything specific about the state of Minnesota for all people. I guess maybe we don't take ourselves too seriously. I think I think there is a little bit of. I'd never even heard of flyover country until I lived in LA. I know these are supposed to be rapid fire questions. I'd never even heard of flyover country until I moved to LA, and now I hear it all the time. And obviously, I think it's stupid. I just think we're all just specks of dust on a speck of dust in an entire universe. And sometimes people in New York or LA think shit is really important. And I think that, and this probably happens in some businesses in Minnesota too, but it felt a little bit of but also who gives a shit? And I kind of like that. Let's do whatever we want to do. And then also, who cares? And I like that Minnesota vibe of that.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Casey, for joining. I think, with comedy, it's can fit such a special place for people. When people find the thing that makes them laugh, it's so important. And especially at certain times, and I could speak for me that there are times when I could have felt, or I felt lost or was going through some internal unrest, and stumbling into the Silver Lake Lounge and seeing the work you're doing at Holy Shit was just really meaningful for me. And I'm just forever a fan from that night going forward. And same thing with you made a short with Ego Nwodum, I Will Find You, that I think got me so emotional in so many ways and made me laugh in so many ways. And so just love your work. I'm forever a fan. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. I mean, the same thing for me. I selfishly, I know I used to say I do comedy because it makes other people feel good, but I think that's bullshit. I mean, that's a nice added bonus, but I'm really doing it for me.
Yeah.
In the same way, I can be in a shitty mood and then go do a show and be like, yeah, for, at least while I'm on stage, I'm not thinking about that. And it probably permeates longer. And yeah, thanks for giving a shout out to that. Yeah, that's an interest. I mean, I used to make a short film a year until I decided I should probably try to make features. And now that stopped me from making anything because they're so expensive. But I Will Find You is one that I'll just like, for a little context in case anyone watches it. At that time, I was trying to work with tone. So I felt like, I was like, I want to see if I can pull other things other than laughter or comedy. And so it's a little trickier in a short, and especially a low budget one. But yeah, that's cool that you dug that, because once you put something out, you don't really know.
Yeah, like you said, with improv, you're getting that instant feedback. With that, you're just like, nothing, unless someone leaves a Vimeo comment or something. You're like,
yeah. And so because I was trying something different, there's always a little bit of me being like, should I hide that one? Should I keep that one up there? And so it's nice to hear that you dig it, because I was definitely trying to like see if I could. I'd read some. I don't even know if I think I watched a Hitchcock documentary. I was gonna say I read a book on Hitchcock, but I don't read books, so I can't see that true. I watched a documentary on Hitchcock, and he was talking about like different ways to elicit emotional responses from audiences, and so I was kind of trying to play with that in a fun one. So cool, thank you so much. That is on my Vimeo. If anyone wants to watch that or any of my other short films, you can check that out.
Yeah, it's so good. I like I said, it's funny. There's moments that like you can like, there's questions that he's asking that are very funny, but it's just like, it's clear there's something more behind that. And then when he asks other questions later, it's just like all types of things, all types of emotions, and really, really good. So
thank you.
All right, as we go out, where can people find you, follow you, anything you want to share or promote?
Yeah, Casey Feigh on all social media that I'm on or that I think I would be good on. And then Holy Shit Improv, we've talked about a bunch. That's an improv show we do here twice a month in LA at UCB and Dynasty Typewriter. And then we tape all those shows, we live stream, and then we put them all on a Patreon. So you can watch every show we've ever done. We have over 100 some shows there, patreon.com/Holy Shit Improv. And we're now doing a new tier of that, which is we sit down with improvisers and watch the shows they've done and talk about the choices they made, whether they regret them, why they did them, if they were just performing confidently and had no idea what to do right here, or did they have an idea or whatever. So if you're interested in improv comedy, if you're starting to get into it, it's kind of a great learning tool to see some amazing performers kind of talk honestly and give feedback on shows they've done. So you can check all that out on our Patreon.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again. Wishing you the best. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
That'll do it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you're here in LA, go check out Holy Shit Improv at the Dynasty Typewriter or UCB. It's an incredible show. You won't be disappointed. And if you're not here locally, go subscribe to the Patreon. There's a backlog of incredible performances with a rotating cast of people from SNL and just your favorite comedians. You can't go wrong. Subscribe to the Patreon. We're so thankful for Casey and his time. It was such an awesome show, and we have more guests coming your way, and I'm really excited about the roster that we put together for this season. So, we'll see you next time. But until then, what's your Pop 5?